Hello, everyone. Welcome to World at War podcast. Today, my special guest is artist extraordinaire and writer and creator, Mr. Jordan Noir. Jordan, good to see you, my friend. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you today?
I'm doing great, brother. Doing great, man. Okay. So we have Spawnuary, right? And I'm doing an interview with Thomas, and he calls you out by name, bro. So I have a feeling that's a good thing for an artist who's trying to get a cover with Spawn, man. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, actually, he did another interview a couple days ago that I watched live, and he took it a step further. What he said, it was because it's funny. The day before, the other guy that he mentioned, Jeff Monk, he's a good friend of mine, and he and I were talking about Spawnuary, about the contest, and how people like you got people who are already doing Batman and X-Men submitting stuff, and Jeff is just like, man, like I'm just not near as good as these guys. I don't feel good about this. I was like, man, like you are great. You like nobody's a master. That's not what they're looking for. Like Ivan Tao's not a master. He's very good at one specific thing, but like none of us are Leonardo freaking Da Vinci over here, right? Like we draw muscly guys in tights. We're not masters. We're all very good at a specific thing. So like just keep doing your thing. And like we know that Thomas and Todd and all the right people are watching us. All of our followers are being very supportive and sharing our stuff all over the place. These publishers are taking notice and liking our work and following us. And they're seeing with Spawnuary that we're doing stuff that we never were able to do before at a higher quality, in a higher quantity, in a shorter time. So like it's our year, man. It's gonna happen. And then a day after the second interview happens, and Thomas is like, yeah, he's essentially said the same thing he did on World at War Comics here, where he's like, there are some amazing talents coming out in here. And even if Todd doesn't pick up some of these people, I've been building a little folder where, this person does good inking. I'm going to pull them, put them with this colorist. Maybe this wasn't the right piece for what we're looking for right now, but you have the potential to do this. And he's like, and a lot of people are doing this. Specifically, two of these guys I see that are watching, Jordan Noir and Jeff Monk, and like these guys are doing stuff that I've never seen before, that we've never had on a book before, and they haven't been just doing it for this contest. Lots of people you've never seen draw Spawn all of a sudden are hopping on the bandwagon because it's an amazing opportunity, right? Like
Absolutely, yeah.
Todd McFarlane Productions putting the offer out there. Like you guys touched on this a bit when you talked to Thomas, that there's so many of these new imprints, so many of these new, or maybe it was the other interview where there's so many new publishers popping up, but it's all these people who are incredibly high profile to begin with, and they're not opening a door for any new creators. They're just saying like, I want the money for myself now, which is totally fine. Totally
More power to you, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you built that
that's
career,
the dream.
but it's not an open door for you guys, right?
Exactly. It's like, um, we'll get to this later with the AI art and its launch, but a lot of artists right now are suffering from two things: imposter syndrome, like I was talking with Jeff about. He's like, I don't believe in myself, even though he's fantastic, and I am in awe of what he can do on a day-to-day basis. And then we all feel, a lot of people they feel like they've been climbing this mountain, and last year just saw the ladder get pulled up in front of them. So that's kind of tough. We'll talk more about that later. But then what Thomas said at the end is like, so these two guys are two of these people we're going to be having talks with after this, and you're going to be seeing their names on some covers, a few covers in the very near future. So like, rather than leave it kind of open-ended, he in corporate speak, though I can't get in trouble for saying this because I didn't say anything definite, but basically told me and Jeff that we will be doing Spawn comics in the near future. And so right away I messaged Jeff on Instagram like, see, do you freaking believe me now? And he's like, oh yeah, you got me. You can give me an I told you so. But yeah, Thomas is great. He's been instrumental in the last year helping me develop and get better.
That's awesome, man. So for those of you that are listening, man, Thomas is the editor in chief of Spawn over at Image Comics and Todd McFarlane Productions. But man, Jordan, I mean, that's got to be a good feeling, right? So you're an artist, you love what you do, you have a goal, right? And then you have the editor in chief mention you by name. I know you guys have gone back and forth, but I mean, what kind of feeling is that knowing that you're being called out on not just one podcast, but a couple where your name has been mentioned, man? That's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's hard out here for career artists, freelance artists who starting out. Like when originally I was, my first professional gig doing art was, I was a tattooist, and we could talk more about that. But it's hard to get it's hard to feel it, especially with the commodification of content. it feels like you're screaming out into the void. I want somebody to see my stuff. Like that isn't the end goal. And I want to talk about that too, how product versus process, because that feeds into the imposter syndrome that we all feel. But yeah, it was the last year or so, Thomas has kind of helped coach me into, and it was also at SpawnCon. I took my comic book that me and my girlfriend had illustrated for a client, and we took it around to all these creators that I grew up loving, like Angel Medina, for example. Angel Medina was my guy when I was around 15 to 16. The way he was doing with Spawn and Venom at the time, there was nothing like it out there. It was the epitome of 90s edgy, over the top cool. And we showed him our book, and he said to me, he's like, why aren't you doing stuff for Marvel and Image and DC? Like, this is better than a lot of the stuff I'm seeing being put on the page right now and sent all over the world. How is it that you're not making a living doing this? Like, well, I don't feel like I'm good enough. I haven't sent out any packages. Like, nobody knows I exist. He's like, well, you got to start doing that. Like, it's not the, you're never going to feel ready. You're never going to feel confident getting ready for the thing. Everybody in this industry wants you to feel like this. They want you to feel like you're not good enough, because this is something I do believe in. If you want to be a professional artist, you have to get ready to be taken advantage of. That's kind of the unfortunate, realistic nature of the scene.
Really, you think? I mean, that's a terrible.
Is
I
it?
mean, I get
Do.
you, man. It's
I have a
terrible,
whole.
though,
I
man.
have a
But
whole thing to talk about that, but just to keep
wow,
on
that's awful.
tangent. Angela Medina said, this is your time. You need to start making a living off of this. You can do the work. You've demonstrated you can do the work. You've demonstrated you've done higher quality work than a lot of people that are, there, that Marvel is flying all over the world to go to conventions and stuff. And that really hit hard for me, where I realized, like, I can do this. And I have friends like Thomas Healy, Jeff Monk, who I think is one of the best artists I've ever seen in a long time, is telling me that I'm better than him. If all these people are going to spend their time believing in me, and they don't have to, it's time for me to believe in myself. And when Thomas said that on the podcast, on the show here, I actually hadn't watched it at the time. It was on Reddit. Somebody had shared the video and said, our boy Jordan Noir got a shout out here from Thomas Hughes. So I went and checked it out. And I'll tell you, I was walking around smiling for a couple of days, pep in my step. I didn't, because this is in the throes of Spawnuary, this is happening, and I've been trying to put out piece after piece. Like, luckily I have very understanding clients who had jobs booked, and I was like, I got this thing I got to do. So your jobs are going to be pushed back by a month. I got to focus solely on this. And they were luckily all pretty cool with that. And yeah, after watching your show there, I was up for 36 hours afterwards working on that Breakfast Club Scorched piece.
Nice.
Because I was just so fired up. I felt so good about myself. And what Thomas does for artists like me is something that you don't see done very often, if I'm being honest. Like, people that have the voice, that have the platform, that have the profile that people actually listen to, they're struggled to get there for themselves, right? So they got to make sure that their work gets seen, their work gets taken seriously. So, like, you don't want to waste your platform on building up your own competition in a way, right? Which is understandable. It's unfortunate, but that goes into the societal pressures that come with the market that we work in, where there's so few jobs that are so well regarded that it's hard to even consider that you're going to get this shot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's kind of a bummer, but you're absolutely right, man. It just, I don't know, it just seems like the door, right? To open that door, man, just takes a lot of people, man. You have to really build kind of a network of people that will speak on your behalf as well. And like you said, to have Thomas doing that, man, that's got to be an awesome feeling. I mean, you already mentioned it was, but man, how cool is that? And I've seen your art, Jordan, so it's freaking insane, man. That's
Well,
why
thank you.
when he mentioned you by name, I went back and I started looking at a lot of the Spawnuary stuff because I've been following it, and then I saw your work, and then obviously you sent me some stuff. I'm like, holy crap, man! So fingers crossed, man. If it's not Spawnuary with all these new titles coming out, there's got to be something out there that you could jump on, and I'm sure they're building a portfolio knowing that Spawnuary for Spawn, okay, we got that. But we're really looking for artists for all these new titles that are coming out. So I think that's incredible, man.
Well, I can talk to that. Since Spawnuary has been happening, I'm putting out these pieces that I've been very lucky in the algorithm that they show me pretty into the top 50, top 100 posts on at most every time I look. Um, the From that, I've already had 3 reach outs from indie publishers and artists, or indie publishers and indie writers. There's one in the UK, Black Rose Publishing, and so that got me a Not Tested on Animals cover. And that's what I was saying, that relates to what Angel Medina said, is just do the work, just do it, and people, if you do good work, people will notice. Just don't worry about, can I do the work, just start doing the work before anybody pays you. Like that's how I broke into the music industry. When I was doing album art for a decade, I just started doing fan art of songs that I really like, posting them and tagging the artists, and soon those artists were hiring me to design their vinyl for their next album.
That's awesome.
So yeah, just do the work, and it all kind of puts itself together. But as I said earlier, if you want to do art as a living, as a vocation, I hate to use the word professionally, because that's to me not what art is about. It's not about being a professional. It's not about being like, I don't need to be the next Todd McFarlane. That would be lovely if I could have that McFarlane money, but realistically, all I want is the resources to keep drawing cool things for the rest of my life. That's what most artists want, is they just want to be able to, not many of them want to be famous. Like, that is obviously a thing, but we all just want to be able to make cool shit for people to look at. And it's unfortunate that that's getting to be so hard.
I mean, the good thing is, right, you had people reach out to you, and even if you could do some of these covers for like an IDW or some of these other smaller independent publishers, man, all you're doing is building this portfolio up that I don't know, you just have a lot of stuff that you could put in front of Image or Marvel or DC, and I think that could be incredible as well.
Yeah, this is my year. That's my plan for.
Yeah.
Like last year, I first was the first time I started really doing cons. It's something I learned last year doing cons is you don't get noticed if people don't know you exist. And the way that people know you exist is by being in the room. And like, you can't play the game if you're not at the table type of mentality, right? So even if you haven't done any comic books, you just do fan art stuff, go book a table at a convention. And that will really help with your imposter syndrome, your confidence as an artist, because you're getting feedback from people who have it's not your mom telling you that you can draw really well, right? This is John from Memphis who never knew you existed and comes past and sees like, that's a cool Godzilla. I really like that. And just building those connections and meet other artists. That's also, we all live in a vacuum, right? Like, I spend 24 hours a day in this office. Well, not 20. I sleep sometimes. In this office by myself. Well, with my girlfriend, she works with me and she does a lot of my colors on the commissioned books. Nice. Sitting here drawing by myself, so it's easy to feel isolated and whatnot. But if you make artists friends, like, I don't mean just like message or post, hey, nice picture on somebody's Instagram. Like, message them, get to know them, get to know an artist, and have somebody to bounce stuff off, and that will help make you better too, because the connection is kind of been lost, ironically, in a world where we're all more connected than ever.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we just are, right? We just are. Can we excuse me, let's talk a little bit about how this passion for art started, Jordan, that way people understand where this is all coming from. Like, were you drawing at a very young age, or is this something a little bit later in life that took place? And when did like doing comic art become like a real major focus for you?
Well, I'm sure you hear this a lot, but literally the first thing I can remember.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I was really little. I was about 2.5 when my parents split up. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the first things I remember is, sleeping on the living room floor with my dad because he wasn't sleeping in the bedroom with my mom. And when they finally split up, this is like the first memories I have is going over to my dad's house, and he's a tattoo artist. And he always had action figures of Spawn and Spider-Man and stuff all over the walls. So we'd sit around and watch Terminator and a lot of Godzilla movies. Like, my dad is also a turbo nerd. before being a turbo nerd was cool. Um, and so yeah, he was a tattoo artist, and we would sit there on Saturdays when I'd go visit, and he would draw me pictures of Godzilla and Spawn and the Terminator and stuff like that. And I would go home over the week, and I would, to impress my daddy, I'd sit there and I'd redraw his drawings to see how close I could get to them. And then like I got to be about 8 or 9, and my dad stopped coming to visit and stopped coming to pick me up. He kind of just disappeared. And I remember very vividly being a young lad, 8, 9, and sitting there with those redrawn drawings of my dad's on Friday night, sitting on my grandma's porch, waiting for my dad to come pick me up, sitting there till 2 or 3 in the morning, falling asleep on the porch because my daddy's coming home. He's going to come get me. And because he sees I can draw so good and because I love all the same things he does, he's going to love me and we'll all be happy. It was this weird, reptile, I want my dad back type of reflex. And that like never left me my whole life. I ended up becoming, and I have some health issues. Like when I was in grade 2, I fell off a slide at school. I was pushed off a slide in the middle of winter and landed on the gravel head first. And they say it created this scar tissue on my pineal gland. So now I have this cyst that causes all these issues. And I was also only born with one kidney. So I wasn't allowed to play sports. I wasn't allowed to play hockey like all the other kids here in Canada. I wasn't allowed to play football or soccer. So I was inside a lot of the time, and I had nothing except for this itch to prove myself to this mythological father figure. And I would sit there, and it's always like, I think the first famous person's name I can remember is Todd McFarlane. Because my dad was always talking about how cool this guy is, because this is back in the early 90s when Todd was like the maverick of the industry and just throwing the middle finger up to everybody in power and doing his own thing, right? And my dad would talk about that constantly to this little boy. And I remember being a kid and thinking like, one day I'm going to get on that Spawn cover. One day he's going to be proud of me, and then like it'll all be worth it. So it's a sad and warped story where it all comes from. But honestly, it gave me something that I love, that gives, like, I'm never happier than when I'm sitting here at this desk. There are very few things that make me as happy as sitting there with a pencil or an Apple Pencil in my hand, make with the Christmas morning excitement of this is probably going to be kind of cool when it's done. But yeah, that's where it comes from.
Yeah. I mean, everyone has some sort of an experience in their life that drives, and sometimes it's a positive, sometimes it's a negative. At the end of the day, man, the way it's pushed you, Jordan, I mean, you're pumping out some pretty amazing stuff. So although I feel bad that you've had to experience that, I'm not sure your art would be the same if you didn't, right?
Oh, absolutely. And like, to his credit, he's the reason I ended up getting into professional art to begin with, because when I was 17, I had troubles as a teenager, and I was out of home, living on the streets, bouncing around between friends' house. And my grandma took me in, got me off of the drugs, and got me back in school and all this stuff. Things were going relatively well. And then all of a sudden, my dad pops back into my life. He sends me a message on Instagram one day, and he's like, "Hey, I'm opening a tattoo shop out here on the other side of the country. You want to come out and learn how to tattoo?" And like, I dropped out of school, I packed all my shit, and I was across the country faster than you could blink. And that taught me a lot about working in art and what it means. Like, I have this whole saying that art is like masturbation. It's meant to be incredibly personal. It's meant to feel really good doing it. But the moment that you monetize it, or somebody's standing over your shoulder watching you, telling you how to do it, that's when it gets a bit weird. And you have to make certain concessions to make a living masturbating for money, right? Like, so that's kind of what tattooing taught me, is that you're using a highly developed and personal skill for somebody else's benefit. And if you're not, that's why I ended up leaving tattooing, because I had a day where, this was mid 2000s, 7 college chicks came into the shop, and they all wanted live, love, laugh tattoos that had feathers that were exploding into birds. Right? Like,
Wow.
we've all seen this tattoo a billion times. I've done this tattoo probably 100 times, and 7 times, one after the other, that were all completely identical, I was like, nah, this ain't for me. This ain't the thing. We're gonna go try something else.
That was the end, right? That was the
Yeah, that was the day I packed up my stuff at the chair and didn't come back to the shop again.
Oh man, that's funny, bro. That's hilarious, man. So tattoo, what what can you take away from doing tattooing from an artistic standpoint that is very useful in either doing sequential art or doing covers for comics?
Oh, that's a great question. So, like I said earlier, about if you want to have a career in art, if you want to make a living from doing your art and use your art to give you the resources to make more art, you kind of have to flip a few burgers before you're going to own a McDonald's, right? That's the reality of it. When I first started out, when I first left the tattoo business, I wanted to only do original stuff. I would not do fan art. I wouldn't draw superheroes. I would only draw my own ideas. And that's back then I was going out about it all wrong. This is like at the birth of social media. I didn't use social media. I was booking small art shows and craft fairs locally and selling painted canvases. That's what everybody thinks about in their head when they think about having a job as an artist. That's the first thing that your mind goes to. I just want to draw the pictures and sell them. But there's a disconnect there. You have to have flipped those burgers before nobody gives a shit about anybody else, realistically. Like, that's
Unfortunately.
until they're told that there's intrinsic value by somebody that they respect in somebody else. So why do people like Basquiat paintings? They are not technically impressive. They're not fine art. They're cool looking, but from a person who's an illustrator who thinks in form, composition, foreshortening, shadows, light sources, who thinks very clinically about art, I can recognize that there's artistic value to his expression, but I know that there wasn't 10 years of learning how to draw a bicep included in that process. And so why is something that's visually less compelling, realistically, to the lizard brain? We like patterns, we like colors, we don't like a mess. That's just the way our brains work. Why do people respond well to it? Well, because somebody learned about his story, learned about his struggle, took it seriously, that gave it value to it, and then that curator, that gallery of prestige, put up his work, and that taught a bunch of other people, like, this has value, this is worth it. Why are superheroes so prevalent in the movie industry now? Like, we're having a decline at the moment, but like the last 10 years, everywhere you looked was superheroes. Why? Because Iron Man made millions and millions and millions of dollars, and studios saw there's value in doing this finally. So what I took from doing tattoos is that you're not always going to like what you work on. You're very lucky. You're in the Kim Jong-gi 1% of artists that gets to do what they want every day and have people respond well to it, to the point where you can make a living. They're very, very rarely going to see that. And you're very lucky if you can achieve that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but that's awesome. It's just difficult to do. So what I would take away from that is, do things like, I hate to say just go ahead and do fan art, like, if you to get noticed, because, and that's also depends on what your goal is. Like, some people are happy just, having a job at the local insurance place and then coming home after work and doing a quick sketch. That's all it has to be for them. But if you want to make that living, you got to find a way to make people care about your work. And the way to make people care about your work, unfortunately, in the commodified content era, is to do things that other people will already like. So that's why you see so much fan art and stuff. It's not because people want to draw Superman and Batman over and over again. Like, that's a big thing for me. I do love Spider-Man. I do love Spawn. I love drawing Spawn. I don't generally partake in art contests. I have my ethical issues with them. But when it was a Spawn one, I was like, I'm going to be drawing Spawn all month anyways, so I might as well do some really cool stuff and go take this shot. But find something that you love already, that other people love, and find a way to apply that to your art. That way you don't feel like you're wasting your time. You're enjoying your time, and you're doing something that's more likely to get noticed than your original characters for your book that you've written, then build on that notoriety and then release your own books. Because then they're, if people already give value to your work, they're more likely to buy your book, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Out of curiosity, being such a big Spawn fan and drawing him for so long, have you ever did a Spawn tattoo?
Oh yeah, I've done a few Spawn tattoos. um my tattoo on my chest is not the Spawn M, but it was inspired by, it's meant to be the same idea. um and then I have like this tattoo on my arm that's supposed to be like similar to Spawn's gauntlet, but it's made out of a rose and hearts and stuff. um and
That's
then
awesome.
there's a few Spawn. I did for a friend of mine in British Columbia. He's got the Spawn like shield on his shoulder. But yeah, I've done a few Spawn tattoos.
So when you're doing live whatever when you're doing that all the time, is it kind of awesome when someone walks in and goes, "Hey, can you do Spawn?" Like, isn't that a
Oh,
nice break?
yeah, that's what makes it worth it. Like
Yeah,
in my freelance work now, it's very much the same,
yeah.
especially when I was doing album art before, like AI art came out and album art, that whole field just collapsed because musicians, they went whole hog on it. You can't make you There's nobody really working in that field at the moment unless you're already like people who are commissioning somebody like Leaking Color or Greg Capullo or Lowish to do their cover art because they want that brand recognizability of that. Oh, like, again, the implied value. Um, there was a lot of albums I did art for that weren't necessarily my favorite albums. Like they weren't music that I would have went and listened to myself. But the cool thing was that a lot of times doing album art is I was sometimes I was given a very specific idea. Like I want this person standing here in this club doing these things. Cool, I could do that. It's still up my alley. But there are other times where they're like, I have an idea where I'm thinking like American Werewolf in London, but in the 80s suburbs. What can you do with that? And I just get to go wild and do my own thing. And I show it to them, like, whoa, holy shit. I couldn't even imagine that.
That's awesome,
And
man.
yeah, it's a real treat when that happens. But again, you got to do those jobs that you got to do there's one, I call him my patron because like back in the 1700s, an artist used to have a patron, right? They had somebody who was a wealthy aristocrat or something that gave them a studio, sent them a couple bucks each week to get food and stuff, gave them their supplies so they could just create whatever the heck they wanted. Like this, it's the antiquated Patreon. That's where the word Patreon comes from. It's from the patrons of old. And that would give that patron the rights to any art that they created at a first shot glance. So then there would be some sort of, profit sharing deal or something like that, or the artist was just living off of them to create their stuff. Um, to get to that point, to be this guy, he asks for some things sometimes that I'm like, man, I gotta draw this today. Um, but he loves it, and he loves it specifically because it's my work and it might not be my thing, but that gives me the resources I need to, feed me and my family, keep a roof over our head, keep the lights on. And it also puts more of my work out there that somebody else appreciates, that they're going to talk about to their friends and give implied value to my work. So then if even 5% of those people that he ever meets look at my stuff, right? If a person meets a million people in a lifetime, that's what, 50,000 people that are going to have been exposed to me. So it's not about always doing what you love. It's about making, unfortunately, certain concessions to be able to have the resources to do what you love. And when those shots where you get to do something that you genuinely are fired up and excited about, they do come. And it's all the sweeter when somebody's like, yeah, I'm going to pay your rent this month to do something that you would have been doing anyways, right?
Exactly, yeah. No, there's you have artists, right, and they do covers. That's one style of art, but then you have sequential art,
Mm-hmm.
which I've met a lot of artists. In fact, I was interviewing Max Fiamara, who is on the Sacrificers right now for Image Comics, and he was talking about, growing up as an artist, trying to break through. One of the things that he struggled with was sequential art because it's so different than doing just a cover. So he was doing covers and it was awesome, but he wanted to make that transition, and he got a lot of feedback. And he took like 4 years to kind of master that craft. And he actually went back to school to learn sequential art because it is so different. In your
It's a very different
experience,
game. Yeah.
yeah, very different game, man. Can you kind of talk about that in your experience of the differences between the two and which one you're most comfortable with?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, that'd be awesome.
So while I do like when I do when I go to a comic book, I do all the sequential art. I generally, if I don't write it myself, I rewrite it for whoever is commissioning the book. I structure out the pages, do the storyboarding, do the illustration, and then I do the covers as well. If I were to say which one I like more, covers, absolutely. Because covers, you get the time to really execute on one focused idea, and you don't have to you tell a story with your picture. You create a composition that gets people interested enough to open up the book and look inside. That's more exciting to me because it's it's less arduous, because sequential work is very difficult. It's similar to those 7 live love laugh tattoos. Okay, so with sequential art, you have to learn how to draw things that you have no interest in drawing. You have to draw cups, sinks, garbage cans, newspapers. For me, the thing is cars. I despise drawing cars.
I've heard
Uh,
cars and then animals like horses. People cannot stand doing cars or horses for some reason.
yeah, horses are at least a bit more dynamic.
Yeah.
Cars are like, which ironically, the most recent book that we put out, Exodus 3320,
Uh-huh.
the 80% of the panels are in cars. It's all chase scenes for most of it. Um, but sequential art, it has there's two things about it. It's more demanding for timelines, because if you're working for somebody that's putting out a book a month, which is the idealized way, and a average comic book is 26 to 28 pages, right? Um, they can be shorter, they can be longer, but so that's almost a page a day. They have to sit down and illustrate, right? And depending on, like, if you are doing, who does really good sequential art, if you are doing stuff like for example, the manga Berserk, or One Punch Man is another good one. One Punch Man is basically animation put to a page. He's drawing the beginning of an action, the middle of an action, and the follow through of an action. If you could flip it fast enough, you would get kind of an animation out of it. That's very hard to do, and it can be boring to draw the same guy doing the same action 3 different times for 3 different angles, and then having to draw the same cup on the table 3 different times for 3 different angles. It can feel monotonous. It can feel like a production line. So that's why I imagine many people prefer doing cover art. Now, there are other people who are just built different. Like, there are tricks. Like, Todd McFarlane said, people always tell Todd McFarlane, you draw the best cityscapes. He's like, I don't draw cityscapes at all. He's like, what I do is I make Spider-Man really big, and I draw a little building down here and a little building down here. Sequential art is an art into itself. Finding those little cheat codes that get you through, or you can just be a masochist like the guys who do some of those mangas and just go hog wild with it. I don't know how they produce at such a high quality
Yeah.
so fast and so often, but it's amazing that they do. But I imagine it's workload, and it's also monotony, right? Like, it's exciting to do 8 different covers for 8 different characters in a month, and then have 4 or 5 days to do each, right? Rather than you're drawing the same conversation for 2 weeks. I that it does. That's why I like to rewrite the scripts that people give me, because I like to make sure
So is that the
it's
secret to
going on.
get through it? Is to kind of add your own twist from a story to kind of make it go a little bit like faster and get through it?
Yeah, find your thing. Like,
Yeah.
remember Todd McFarlane used to draw Felix the cat all over the place, right? Just as a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge thing. And I imagine the emotional satisfaction of getting one over on Marvel like that nobody noticed, made drawing those pages far more enjoyable. Um, for me, it's like I like to add dynamic lighting. So there's always something cool to it's a comic book. It's not reality. You can fake lights however much you want. That's kind of why they're colorful and vivid. They're supposed to be. Um, and yeah, I like to write dynamic angles in and lots of forced perspective. If I'm going to draw a car 9 times on a page, I'm going to make sure that I only have to draw that car in its full detail once and do that big and make it look really cool. And I'm going to find my little nods and ways that I can work around these things that I don't want to do. But also, like with Spawnuary, I've been pushing myself to particularly focus on those things that I would usually avoid. Like buildings and chains are another thing that I don't really like drawing. Ironically enough, Spawn is my favorite thing to draw, and he's just dripping in chains.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the wrong character.
Yeah,
they're like a living chains too, man. They got right. They're an extension of Spawn, so they're all over the place.
Yeah, so with that last She Spawn piece that I did, I sat down for like 18 hours looking at pictures of Todd's chains, Capullo's chains, Crane's chains, and trying to figure it. And I ended up just drawing them like geometry, actually blocking out this space and then constructing the chain link by link. So I pushed myself. It was a very long 12 to 18 hours just drawing squares over and over again. But like I found the cheat code. It finally clicked. And now I can finally do it. So it's good to find your ways to work around things, but also, like I said, you got to draw the cups, you got to draw the garbage cans. You got to figure that stuff out. And that's the real bummer about sequential art, is that you can't get away with just drawing cool guys and cool poses over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, some people are going to be at a dinner table just talking, right? And you're like, that doesn't sound like it's so boring, man. But I guess I got to do it, right?
Yeah.
So, can you kind of talk about, like, you got the Spawnuary? Thomas mentions your name. It seems like people are starting to notice you a lot more. It seems like more work is coming in, which is super exciting for you, Jordan. Are you looking for commissions, and can people reach out to you if they have an idea for something, or are you kind of managing that a little bit close, to the chest a little bit, and you don't want to have a bunch of people reaching out to you overnight?
Oh no, absolutely. Like I've been living solely off my art since I was 18 years old now, right? And I'm in my mid 30s now, and I'm always open to talking to people and collaborating. I might not take all the jobs, right? Like I tried, like I said, I do try. I'm lucky enough where I have enough requests and reach outs coming in, enough stuff that I have to be selective to be able to. I can't do it all, right? Like as it stands already, my wait list on projects is about a month and a half before I even start them. So like there's people who have paid their deposits for their projects, and then they're just waiting for me to work through it. Goes, you pay your deposit, you go onto a list. When your name comes up on the list after I cross off the previous job, then your job starts, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm always open to talking about more projects and stuff. It's just I'm not saying it's impossible to happen, but like if you reach out to me and say, hey, I need a cover for this book next week, there's a good chance I'm gonna be like, I don't know if I can make that happen.
Yeah.
If it's something really cool, I do make exceptions, right? If it's something I'm really excited about. So that's what I was saying about get to know, even as not just as an artist, getting to know artists. If you're a writer, which is an artist, if you're a person who consumes content, that it's good to get to know artists, and you kind of have more of an appreciation for what they do, and you can kind of feel them out. And when you have that idea for a project, you have that previous relationship as well, where like a lot of the stuff some of the stuff that people reach out to me for are people who were previously followers or fans, mm-hmm. and they had an idea for a project and they reached out, and I probably would have told them no if I didn't have a personal relationship with them beforehand from them supporting me in my work for so long, right? But yeah, I'm always open. Reach out. I'm everywhere. I'm on YouTube streaming live almost every day, Twitch almost every day, Instagram live every day. Like I'm everywhere. If you just Google Jordan Noir art, you'll find me somewhere.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That is so cool. So Jordan, kind of to wrap things up, man, is there anything else that you want people to know about Jordan, about your art, and what people could expect for the remainder of the year? It sounds like you have quite a bit of things kind of lined up. Obviously, Spawnuary, fingers crossed something comes out of that for you. I'm I'm pulling for you, man. So if there's anything that we could do as fans of your work to get in Thomas's ear, maybe copy him on a couple things. Although he already knows who you are, Todd. What else
Yeah,
are you
Todd is
working
the one
on
that we
this
got to
year?
convince.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
got to get Todd convinced. Thomas has already bought in,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
unfortunately,
He's
he's
good.
not the boss, right? He's got
Yeah.
to defer to Todd. But yeah, like I'll address each of those things one by one. So,
Please, yeah.
what to expect for the rest of the year? This year, like I said, I took my goal for the start of the year was I'm going to get a Spawn cover by the end of the year. That's my focus. But it's one thing to say that, but you have to have a plan to get there. So executing on don't just plan to do it, set out and do the thing. So I have a few scripts for a few comic books that I've been working on for a few years that I have all the lore books, character designs. I have a bunch of the pages already drawn. Like I have 3 issues of a comic book that I just never released because
Wow, that's incredible, man.
holding
So this
on
is
to.
your own characters, your own universe that you've created?
So it's I when I was working in the music industry, I was specifically working in the retrowave synthwave scene, right? And so I have the licensing to everybody that I met that I worked with. I would ask them, "Hey, I'm writing this comic book. It's like it's a cyberpunk story about a world where, and I wrote this before AI was even a thing, where AI became a problem and we outlawed AI, and what would the world be like after it had had everything done for it for so long?
That's
And we
awesome.
all of a sudden had to do things for ourselves, and how late stage capitalism is like the most nightmarish thing that you can imagine if you sit down and think about it long term. So I took all these artists. So there's like I have the licensing to Dance with the Dead, Carpenter Brute, Ollie Ride, Michael Oakley. Um, there's about 36 of them all together. And what I did is I wrote a story that revolves around each of them as characters in this world. And the narration to the book is actually the lyrics to their songs.
No way.
So
That's
you could
dope, dude.
sit down with a playlist, and parts of the book are sang out to you while this action is this story about what it means to be human in a world and what it means to be an artist in a world where art and humanity aren't valued anymore. Um, there's a rogue AIs, post-apocalypse, fucking
That was
uh,
amazing, bro.
massive mega corporations that masquerade as religions. And it's, yeah, the book is saying to you. So this year I'm probably going to start releasing some of this on the tail end of, if I get some of this bigger published work, you're going to start seeing some of these originals. There's another one called Kaiju Wave, because there's Spawn and Spider-Man and Godzilla for me.
Yeah, that's it.
um
Those are the
and
three.
so yeah, I'm a happy little kid in a candy store these days with all the kaiju content that's been
Oh,
coming
dude,
out,
it's like blowing up, man.
blowing up. And it's so vindicating to be that 7-year-old who the hockey kids at school would take their Godzilla toys and throw them in the mud. And now
Yeah.
like Godzilla is one of the most popular things in the world again. I wrote a book it's called Kaiju Wave, and each of the monsters, there's actually an album on Spotify. Me and a friend of mine goes by the name of Lost Nights, we recorded an album where there's songs for all the different monsters. And again, it's another comic book about, it's kind of like a Goonies coming of age story about young teens who become the Lovecraftian version of the Power Rangers, basically. And they experience violence and pain the way that a normal brain does sexual pleasure and gratification. So, like, not having gone through their own adult awakening, so to speak, yet, they're all of a sudden thrust into this world. And every time they come out of their kaiju form, they're an adult, like they're aged up to an adult, and they have to age
Yeah.
in reverse back to being a kid over time. But the more they become a monster, the harder it is to turn back. So you're going to see a lot of interesting there. What I want to do is do augmented reality with them. So when I want to have an app where you open up the app and you scan the page, and there's animation in the panels as well as the music for that page being played out directly to you, so you don't have to go and try and manage pausing and playing a playlist while you're reading through it. So on the tail end of, if I get some of this published work, you're going to see some of this original stuff. Um, Taking a bit of a step back from commission work to be able to facilitate doing this stuff. Gonna have a Patreon pretty soon. I'm starting to announce these projects so that people can get early looks at them. And yeah, those are my plans for this year. Like I said, it's time to start doing it. And it's nobody wants to open the doors, so I'm gonna start breaking through some walls and
You got to break through the walls, Jordan. I
yeah,
mean, you're
doing
too
my
talented
juggernaut
not
thing.
to do it, bro. You're too talented, man. Too talented, man. Someone's gonna pick
Thanks.
it up. You'll have a Spawn cover, man. I have a feeling this year. And you know, they've already released a lot of the artwork for Rat City and what Spawn will look like. So, man, you could start kind of
Yeah.
playing around with that a little bit. You probably already
It,
have, but you can
it's
start messing
funny.
around with it.
Yeah, because for Spawnuary, one of the first things I did a couple of weeks ago is I reached out to Thomas. I had the first thing I had was an idea for Rat City.
Yeah.
And I reached out to Thomas. I was like, I know Rat City wasn't in the like there isn't a week for it, but you think if I do it, it will stand out enough that Todd might be like, yeah, that's the one. That's good. He's like, well, no, stick to the guidelines that Todd laid out. You got to show that you can follow directions before you can go wild, right? You gotta be able to follow the rules before you can start breaking them.
That's good
Um,
feedback, probably. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it also saved me a bunch of time from wasting time on something that wouldn't have gone anywhere. But yeah, Rat City is if I could have a project to work on with McFarlane, it would be Rat City. I would love to write a story arc for that because cyberpunk is my thing. I hate corporations. I despise I loathe capitalism and I hate how society teaches creative people that like you're just lucky to do what you love, even though you give us the entirety of our culture. You just be happy with what we give you. That sits wrong with me. But I
I
still
think
have to,
Rat City's gonna be just nice, man, for you.
yeah. So I would be very excited to work on that. So I've been working on some script ideas for that, and I might be passing that off to the powers that be. Because again, even if I don't win this competition, I'm just gonna keep harassing them. I'm just gonna
Oh,
do
you
what
have to.
Todd
Yeah.
did in the '90s. He
Yeah.
sent out
He
how
had a
many?
stack with 450 rejection letters and he kept every single one. I mean, it's
Yeah,
almost psychotic the way he did it, man, but he remembered every single letter that was returned back to him. And
yeah.
yeah, the guy's just amazing. If you don't like Todd, something's wrong with you, right? You don't have to like Spawn. You don't have to like how he writes or draw, but you have to appreciate
But as a
someone like
man, like
as a
yeah,
man. Oh, come on, man.
he don't he did the thing. He did it better than anybody else at the
Yep.
time. And when nobody would take him serious, he said, "Screw you! I'm gonna go do it myself." Then started doing like music videos, movies, all types of
Yeah.
stuff. And that's the dream. Like that's the artistic dream. I want to be able to, if I could have my end stage dream, it would to be able to have the resources to make music and make little animations, make music videos of characters, do the comics that I like, have action figures of them, be involved in making video games. Like if I could do all this cool stuff, I would. It's just I'm only one dude. I have to kind of focus
Yeah. Yeah.
to like I wish I was Hideo Kojima, but that's
Yeah,
highly
no.
unlikely, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one, man.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan, man, that's awesome, man. You know, Erica Schultz is the writer for Rat City. And I had her on the show. She's amazing, man.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I
if you
follow her.
want to,
She's pretty great.
yeah, she's such a nice person. So you should send her some information for sure, man, because
Yeah,
I think she's super cool like that. She would dig it.
awesome. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah, yeah.
idea. Maybe I will. Because
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
if
she's
she's the
already
one
been hired
writing
by
it,
Todd, right?
yeah,
So
if she's the one who writes the book and says, "Hey, I wrote this issue. Here's the cover for it,"
yep.
they're probably pretty inclined to be like, "Okay, Erica, that sounds good."
Exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah,
if that's get you a break right into that cyberpunk section of Spawn, man, and then that way you could go wild, bro.
yeah.
Well, Jordan, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate meeting you, man. I love your art. There's no doubt in my mind that you won't have a Spawn cover this year just because you're so good. But man, I hope we could stay connected. You're always welcome to come on. I would love to bring you back on once you have your cover and we could talk through that process. And but I think you're gonna do a lot of really good stuff this year, man. This is your year, bro.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. Give me the chance to gab for a bit. I do
I
love
love
to
it, man.
talk.
Your
Like
story is
that's
amazing, dude. Just it's incredible, bro. I mean, I love everything about it, man.
well, thank you. That's why I love streaming. I love just to talk to people. Click. Art is about should be about connection. It's not.
Absolutely.
We gotta talk to each other. We gotta
Yeah.
it's cool to look at a picture, but it's really cool to find out how it was made, why it was made. That's the stuff that really intrigues me. So yeah, I'd be happy to come on anytime. I'll have lots of stuff to talk about this year, so I'll keep in touch. And when I got some stuff to announce, maybe I'll come and talk to you about it first.
I would love that, Jordan. And the motivations behind what makes you you is so relatable to certain people, right? And they need that outlet, and they don't have it unless they hear your story. And then your story allows them to have that outlet to tell their story. And then it just goes. So your story is different than mine. And there's people that need to relate to your story in order to release their story. So I love it, man. I love the motivations behind your work. I love that. If anything, man, your dad gave you this amazing passion for art, for Spawn, for cyberpunk, for kaiju, for all these different things, man. And I love your room, by the way, man. We're gonna have to like go one by one and look at all your toys, bro. I'm a big toy
Yeah,
collector, so
it's a lot of
it's
toys, a
awesome.
lot of sculptures, a lot of records I did the art for.
Did you
It's
keep every record with all the
oh
art that
yeah.
you did? That's so dope,
I've
man.
well, that's one of the things that got my name noticed in the music industry was not just doing the work, because Clayton Crane was doing remarks. This is when remarks really blew up at the time. And
Yeah.
I'm heavy into Crane's remarks. I don't think there's anybody out there really who does them as good as he does. The way that he can incorporate them into the cover. Like this is one.
Yeah, let me see it.
It's not finished. I just got the color flats done on it, but this is what I'm working on for somebody, a Mighty Thor. So
Uh,
I turned the hammer in the actual logo into the
that
one
is
that's
dope.
holding. But like I like to incorporate directly into the piece.
Yeah.
But that's why I started doing that with I would get my comp records from the label. I would get 10 or 15 of them, and I would sit there and turn the character on the front into Spawn or into Batman, or I got blank sleeves that I also do where I'll just completely remake the cover by hand, like the blank comic books equivalent. And yeah, I'll do a Prince record, but make it with Motoko Kusanagi from Ghost of the Shell on the bike or something like that. But yeah, I have tons of records, cassettes, pins, posters, comics, everything that I've ever made. I've kept at least one of.
That's awesome, man. I love it, bro. I mean, why not, man? I would
Yeah,
too if I had your talent, bro.
thanks. Well, yeah, it's a nice little collection. I got lots of neat stuff in here. You got lots of yeah. I'm see having them all out of the box like that. How do you dust all those?
It's tough, man. It's like once a month you got to pull a shelf down and just go one shelf by one shelf. But I keep my Spawn in the middle because I am a huge Todd McFarlane like you fan. I love Todd McFarlane. I think what he's done to the comic industry overall has been extremely positive, and he's helped a lot of people by blazing his own path the way he did. But I love Spawn, so that's front and center. Unfortunately, when I'm doing podcasts,
You're
I'm
right in the
sitting in
way.
front
Yeah.
of it, man. So I got to figure out how to fix that. But I also love DC. I love Mar. I love it all, man. I'm a big comic guy, and I don't know, had a huge impact. Justice League was big growing up. John Stewart. I'm a big Green Lantern fan. I love sci-fi type stuff. But I've been really getting into like manga and anime lately because I have 4 kids, and they're all adults, but my youngest is really into it. So yeah, we've been busting out a bunch of different stuff on there, man. But yeah, Cyberpunk is definitely pretty dope, man. And
Yeah.
yeah, man. Yeah,
Well,
a
yeah, I
lot
would
of
say because
toys, man.
I'm an inbox collector. Everything that I keep is for the
Yeah,
most part in the box, except for the stuff that I got in high school, which is already out of the box because
yeah,
I was 17 and I wanted it all out. But
yeah.
yeah, in the box for me now, just because it's easier to clean.
Yeah, for sure. Easier to clean. And I think the value, right? If that's what you're into, it definitely keeps it. I have a good friend. Well, I have Ty. I don't know if you know Spawn Hunter Ty.
Yep,
Yeah, you were at
he's awesome. I
oh,
met him at
great guy.
SpawnCon. He's a lovely gentleman.
Have you seen his room, like on his videos?
I've seen, yeah, I've watched some of his. I follow him.
He
He's got
has probably everything that has ever been made, not just in the US for Spawn or Canada, but also around the world. I mean, he has Zippo lighters from Japan that were licensed by McFarlane, like crazy little things that you would never know existed. He is like as big of a Spawn fan as I've ever met. And he's
yeah.
inbox too. And I think it stresses him out on my videos when I rip everything open. He's like, oh, don't do
Yeah,
that.
it kills me a little bit on the inside. Like
For
my
sure.
international, I got a bunch of German Spawn books from when I was
Oh,
living
how
in
cool is
Germany
that?
working at the record label. But
Yeah.
I used them to, I would read them because I know all the books. right? And I would read them in German. That helped me learn German while I was living
Oh, that's
there.
cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah. No, I love it, bro. I love it. But I'm been married for almost 30 years, and my wife has made it very clear that whatever I'm collecting stays in this one room. So in box would be really hard to display
Yeah.
them. So I'm just like, I'll just pull it out. I'm not worried about the value of anything. I just enjoy it. And this
Hmm.
is my little escapism, right? Being in this room, doing
Yeah.
podcasts, getting to
The
meet
happy
people like
place.
you. The happy place, my
All
happy
right.
place. I got my big TV, my PS5 right here, and then I do all my work right here because I'm in the grocery industry. So usually I'm working and doing stuff for the grocery industry. But yeah, today's all about you, brother.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a real
Yeah,
treat to get to talk to you and meet you. And yeah, I'd be happy to come back whenever.
I love it, Jordan. I love it, man. Appreciate you and wish you the best this week, man.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right,
Peace
take it
out.
easy. Late.